I've always believed that weddings weren't just about two people in love. They were about every moment that led up to that day. Every sacrifice, every little girl's dream, every tear shed over Pinterest boards and dress sketches. For me, the one thing I had held on to since I was 16 was the dream of my wedding dress. Not just any dress, my dress. A gown that reflected everything I was and everything I had been through. I spent years slowly putting away money from tutoring, summer jobs, birthdays, where I told people to give me cash instead of gifts. That savings account felt sacred, like a hidden treasure only I knew about. I didn't want to burden anyone else with the cost. I wasn't expecting handouts. I just wanted to walk down the aisle in the one thing that would make me feel like I finally mattered. Please subscribe to our channel and tell me in comments from where are you watching this video. But in my house, mattering was a competition I never won. My younger brother Jordan was born with a crown on his head. If I was the hardworking daughter who got A's and stayed out of trouble, Jordan was the charismatic storm that everyone bent over backward to please. He wasn't particularly brilliant, but he had charm. And that charm was apparently enough to earn him endless forgiveness, excuses, and rewards. I had front row seats to the favoritism for years, and even though it stung, I bit my tongue. I told myself I was just being sensitive. I told myself it would even out someday. It never did. When Jordan barely scraped through his senior year, my parents acted like he had won a Nobel Prize. I remember walking in one day and hearing my mom on the phone with our aunt, bragging, "We're planning something big. A limo, professional photos, dinner reservations. He's our first boy to graduate high school." I stood in the hallway, invisible. I had graduated with honors, and my celebration was a dinner at the local pizza place, with me paying half the bill. But what happened next? That was the moment everything changed. My wedding was scheduled for mid-October. My fiancé, Evan, and I had decided to fund most of it ourselves. We wanted it to be small but meaningful. A lakeside ceremony, close friends, some music, dancing, and memories we could carry forever. I had already spoken to a boutique designer, a woman who only worked with a handful of brides a year. Her gowns were custom-made, artistic, and breathtaking. I had fallen in love with one that made me feel like I belonged in a fairy tale. She gave me a window to pay the deposit, and I was ready. The day before the transfer, I logged into my savings account to double-check. The numbers didn't make sense. Thousands of dollars were missing. My stomach sank. I scrolled through the transaction history, hoping I had made a mistake. But there it was. Multiple transfers to a joint account I didn't even remember linking. My name was on it, yes, but I hadn't touched it in years. Panic rose in my chest like a tidal wave. I confronted my parents that evening. They were sitting on the couch, casually watching a cooking show, completely unbothered. When I brought up the missing money, they didn't even look surprised. My dad leaned back with a sigh and muttered something about borrowing it for Jordan's special day. My mom rolled her eyes and added, "You'll get married once, but Jordan only graduates high school once. Besides, you can still find a dress. Don't be dramatic." Don't be dramatic. They had drained the money I had been saving for years, without telling me, without asking, and their justification was that Jordan needed a limo to feel special at his graduation. A graduation where he wasn't even valedictorian. He wasn't top of his class. He barely passed math. But that didn't matter to them. They threw him a full-blown red carpet event while I was left grasping at pieces of a dress dream that would now never be realized. I felt like I was 14 again, watching from the sidelines as Jordan unwrapped his third birthday gift while I was told to be grateful for socks. I felt like I was invisible, disposable, an afterthought in a family where the loudest voice always won. And the worst part? They didn't even apologize. My mother had the audacity to say, "We'll help you later with something else, maybe flowers or photography. The dress isn't everything." But it was everything to me. It was the one thing that was supposed to be untouched, sacred, and mine. I remember crying in the shower that night, biting my hand to muffle the sound. I didn't want Evan to hear, even though he knew something was wrong. I didn't want to look weak, but I felt shattered. It wasn't just about money. It was about betrayal. It was about years of being told I wasn't enough, being reminded that my achievements weren't worth celebrating. I thought they'd finally see me. I thought, maybe just once, I'd be their priority. I was wrong. What they didn't realize, though, was that something inside me had shifted. I wasn't the quiet, accommodating daughter anymore. I had reached a limit. And this time, there was no going back. I wasn't going to scream or beg. I wasn't going to guilt them into fixing it. No, I was going to handle it my own way. With calm, with strategy, and with a kind of poetic justice that even Jordan wouldn't see coming. They had stolen something irreplaceable from me. Now it was time I returned the favor, not out of spite, but out of self-respect. In the weeks that followed, I stopped trying to understand how two people who raised me could justify stealing my dream just to make my brother look flashy for a 5-second walk across a stage. I didn't even bother confronting them anymore. What was the point? Every time I brought it up, they played dumb or called me dramatic. My mom actually said, "It's just a dress, not the marriage," as if that made it better. My dad added, "You'll thank us later when you look back and laugh." But I wasn't laughing. I was hollow. Evan noticed how quiet I had become. He kept asking what I needed, and honestly, the only thing I wanted was a wedding that didn't feel tainted. But how do you reclaim something after the people who are supposed to protect it choose to damage it? I decided to stop waiting for them to fix it. Instead, I started rewriting the script myself. I sold a few of my designer handbags I'd been collecting for years. Sentimental, yes, but replaceable. I took that money and found a local seamstress, an older woman named Marla, who worked out of her small home studio. She wasn't famous, but her work had soul. I showed her a rough sketch of the dress I wanted, tears in my eyes as I explained what had happened. She didn't say much, just gently took my hand and said, "We'll make something better. Not just a dress, a statement." Over the next few weeks, we worked on the gown together. Every stitch felt like a reclaiming of my voice. The fabric was softer than I'd imagined. She added delicate beading and hidden embroidery that read, "She chose herself." It was our little secret. Meanwhile, I made another quiet decision. My parents wouldn't be walking me down the aisle. That honor would go to my godmother, Aunt Renee, the only adult in my life who ever made me feel seen and safe. She cried when I asked her. "Are you sure?" she whispered. "I've never been more sure," I said. When the wedding day came, my parents arrived, late, as always, and were shocked to find they were not seated in the front row. My mother's face turned red when she saw Aunt Renee take my arm. My father looked at Evan like he expected him to fix it. He didn't. He just smiled at me and squeezed my hand. The ceremony was beautiful, honest, intimate, full of people who actually showed up for me. Not just physically, but emotionally. During the reception, my parents tried to make a speech. I gently told the DJ not to hand them the mic. I was done performing gratitude for people who couldn't even respect the basics of my joy. Later that night, I posted a wedding photo online with a caption that read, "She was never the favorite. She was never first. But on this day, she didn't need permission to shine." The post went viral in our small town. Friends, old classmates, even distant relatives reached out. Some shared their own stories of favoritism, of parents who made them feel second best. It became a moment bigger than just a dress. It was about dignity, about drawing a line. A week later, a package arrived at my door. It was the deposit envelope I had saved years ago, the one I kept in my room. Inside was a handwritten note from my mom. It said, "I found this in your drawer. I should have given it back. I'm sorry you felt the way you did." But it was a hard time, and Jordan really needed support. That was it. Not, "I'm sorry for what we did." Not, "We were wrong." Just another excuse buried in guilt avoidance. I folded the note, placed it back in the envelope, and tucked it away in a box labeled Lessons. I've since stopped trying to explain myself to them. My wedding day became a turning point, not just for my marriage, but for my sense of self. I learned that sometimes you can't heal where you were hurt. Sometimes you create something entirely new out of the pieces they tried to shatter. And the most poetic part? That limo they rented for my brother? It broke down halfway through the graduation day. He arrived late, and the spotlight he wanted so badly was gone before he even stepped on stage. Meanwhile, I was dancing under string lights, wearing the most beautiful gown I'd ever seen, next to a man who saw me when my own family didn't. And in that moment, I didn't need revenge. I had peace.